Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Hello.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, the board didn't meet in closed session and Trustee Aguila has joined us, so all 7 trustees are present. And Trustee Aguila, if you could report out the closed session items, please.
Sure, thank you. Good evening. Tonight in closed session, the first item we discussed, pursuant to Government Code 54957 and 54957.6, conference with labor negotiators, Jonathan Ferrer, Assistant Superintendent, Human Resources, employees, organization, Novato Federation of Teachers. Next item we discussed in closed session, pursuant to Government Code 54957 and 54957.6, conference with labor negotiators, Jonathan Ferrer, Assistant Superintendent, Human Resources, employees, organization, California School Employees Association. And that was information only as well. And the next item we discussed in closed session, pursuant to Government Code 54957 and 54957.6, conference with labor negotiators, Jonathan Ferrer, Assistant Superintendent, Human Resources, employees, organization, management, unrepresented. And that was information only also.
All right, thank you. Moving on to approval of our agenda. Our agenda stands as is. There's no changes.
I'll move our agenda, approval of our agenda tonight.
I'll second.
So that was a first by Trustee Cooper and a second by Trustee Aguila. All those in favor to approve our agenda? 7-0. Trustee Cooper, it was really hard to hear you. So just for future, for me, it was hard to hear him. I don't know if anybody else had difficulty.
Yeah, that's good to know. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I'm experiencing a little.
Yeah.
Here,
So just speak up a little bit more, maybe.
Okay, thanks.
Consent. Anybody need to pull anything off consent? Okay. Seeing none, we can move then, and I have no public comment on consent.
I'll move consent agenda.
Okay.
I'll second.
So a first by Trustee Millerick, a second by Trustee Aguila to approve our consent agenda. All those in favor? 7-0. And just to acknowledge the Peter E. Haas Jr. Fund, Family Fund, we've just approved $1 million, a little over $1 million in funding, grant funding, which is amazing. And we appreciate their contribution to our district and to our students every year. They really come through and it fills a void in programs that we wouldn't be able to normally fund probably. So we want to give them a big shout out and a big thank you.
And particularly given the difficulties we're facing this year, it's extra appreciated.
Yes.
Thanks.
Thank you, Trustee Millerick. All right. Announcements from the board. Anybody have any announcements? I'll go down the line. Trustee Millerick.
None for this evening.
Trustee Nell. Trustee Gasson.
I just want to say quickly, and I know it's the topic for tonight, but I've been working a lot with the reentry committee, and I just want to express my appreciation for all of the volunteers that pitched in their ideas and thoughts and everything on that. I know it was a lot to do, especially given everything seems to keep changing, but I appreciate and value everybody's input and time spent on that.
Okay. Thank you. Trustee Mack.
Nothing for me, thank you.
Trustee Cooper.
Thanks tonight.
Nothing tonight. Okay. Trustee Aguila.
Yes, I would like to just remind everybody to continue with keeping social distancing. Mexico is actually calling it, it's not calling it social distancing, they're calling it safe distancing, which is actually, that's kind of interesting. But whatever you like to call it, keep up wearing your mask and keep up doing what you're doing, and hopefully we can all go back to normal soon.
Thank you, Trustee Aguila. I have no announcements either. Superintendent Casca?
Hey, yeah, I just got a couple things. I just want to appreciate everybody who's making sacrifices through this time, and that's pretty much everybody out there on this planet. You know, it's difficult, especially as it pertains to schools. You know, our world seems to change every week, every 2 weeks. Just when we think we have a plan, something comes up, and I just appreciate the people that are being flexible and understanding. Know that we're doing our best to get through this difficult time and support our kids and families and staff, and just appreciate the support along the way. So that's all I got tonight.
Okay, thank you. Non-agenda public comment. We did not receive any non-agenda public comment. And if we did, somebody please speak up, but I don't believe we did. Moving on to discussion action. This is what we're here this evening for. This is our 2020-2021 return to school reentry plan. I will turn it over to Amy, Dr. Amy Carter. As she shares a screen. There we go.
All right, how am I looking? Good. All right.
Yep.
Okay, so this evening we're going to really talk about reentry for 2021. We're going to let you know our academic plans, and you know, there's a lot of variables out there, but I want to start with one thing that I know will be true about our Nevada Unified School District. This is our commitment and our vision as a district that we will provide an innovative and personalized learning experience for every student in a caring and supportive environment to develop the knowledge and skills necessary to be successful and productive citizens. And having worked in this district for the last few years, I can say that this is a lived vision statement. This is in the heart of our educators. It's in the heart of our staff. And I have the privilege of witnessing it every day. So whatever the future holds for us, I know that this will remain true for our district. All right, so the reentry plan. So I was in front of the board on June 16th, and just as a kind of reminder of where we've come from, on May 25th, we instituted a reentry team meeting. We had a great number of volunteers. We broke into strategic groups. We worked in 9 strategic groups to write 9 sections of our reentry plan. We had a draft written on June 11th, and we brought it to the board on June 16th. There has been one revision that's taken place, and that was on June 26th, and that was adjusting for the new guidelines that we received from County Health and AB 77. And I'll talk more about those in a moment. Since we've brought it to you, we've also held a secondary schedule team review. A lot of the variables that we were looking at when we first brought our plan to the board had changed. You know, that we kept kind of a wry approach to this plan, understanding that we are preparing for a future that we were largely ignorant of what it would look like. We had hopes and guesses. But after a month passed by, we reconvened our secondary scheduling team to review our schedule, and our elementary scheduling team also met, and they have had 3 meetings in total. A targeted task force has really kind of done a deep dive on our elementary schedule. And so this is our second revision. It was adjusted July 24th, and it's adjusted to fit the governor's new guidance, Cal OSHA requirements, and the adjusting thinking that we have for our elementary schedule. So that's what brings us here today. We've received some community questions about how we can be looking at our plans for the upcoming year without some signed MOUs with maybe some labor partners. I'm going to have Assistant Superintendent Ferrer kind of explain the legal elements of that.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Carter. So in regards to what is happening with labor, so I want to be clear to the board that schools will be opening remotely with or without a memorandum of understanding between its labor partners. So we have contracts in place with our labor partners that kind of outline what the expectations are, what the conditions are for our employees. Aside from a contract, districts can enter into memorandum of understanding agreements with its labor partners that outlines additional supports or needs or resources that might be needed on both sides. Currently in our district, we are negotiating with both of our labor partners what additional re-entry supports might be needed by the district and what might be needed by our labor partners or our employees. But regardless, if we are unable to come into agreement before school starts remotely, we will still start schools. We will still start school remotely. And if we need to refer to any language on how to address supports or concerns as a result of that, then we default to the contract we already have in place. It is definitely in our best interest to have memorandum of understandings with our labor partners to get some clarity for everyone's sake on how to best move forward throughout the year. But in the absence of that, we do have a contract in place that allows us to reopen schools without a memorandum of understanding. We are hoping to resolve our memorandum of understandings with our labor partners soon. We have been working with them the past couple of weeks in regards to identifying, again, all the needs and supports we need and the needs and supports that they might need. And we are getting close. So we are hoping that before the start of school, we have an agreement in place that we would be able to share out with all of our employees. So that's where we are. I want to assure everybody we still will reopen school remotely, even if we do not have a memorandum of understanding agreed to in place with our labor partners. We have, again, a contract in place already that allows us to do that.
Thank you. All right, so when we were initially in front of you, can you believe it was 4 weeks ago? Our plan was written on a slightly different landscape than that which we face right now. So our initial plan came to you on June 16th. I believe there were about 700 cases, and now we're about 3 times that in Marin. And so, of course, we're going to adapt to the data. We're going to adapt to the best safety protocols and adapt to what we're hearing from the state government and from our county health officials. So you'll see a little bit different messaging in this presentation than that we saw on the 16th, and that's simply because we experienced the summer surge. The structure that you're going to hear from us tonight, I'm going to review some of the legal shifts that have taken place in just the last 4 weeks. We're going to talk to you a little bit about the Virtual Learning Academy, help the board understand what we're doing there, talk about flexible in-person learning and a little update on our planned schedules. We'll share with you and the community some of the general health measures that we're going to have in place for re-entry and give you some understanding of what a return to in-person learning and or closure guidelines are, which are established by the state and our county health. And we'll let you know where we stand with both grading and professional development. And then we'll be happy to answer your questions on the 112-page document that we have put together as a community. All right, the first really impactful legislation that affects re-entry for 2021 is our AB 77 instructional requirement guidelines. This stated that California schools must continue to provide 180 days of instruction, but it adjusts the amount of time that we need to deliver instructional minutes. So 180 minutes for kindergarten, 230 for grades 1 through 3, and 240 for grades 4 through 12. The legislation did this in an effort to assist us with some flexibility as we work with distance learning. And so you'll see that our schedules, our proposed schedules, follow AB 77. The next big piece of legislation that's impacting the 2021 school year is Senate Bill 98. This came out on June 29th. And this was really the legislation trying to establish some rigorous guidelines for what distance learning can be. There are pockets where we really failed to miss the mark is in California and deliver high quality education. So this is really establishing what that needs to be. And so it's making sure that all pupils have the ability to connect. They have devices and they have internet. And NUSD is working hard to meet that expectation, and making sure that the education that we're offering online is aligned to those grade level standards. We've heard some mention of the education that took place in March and April and May as being crisis learning, and that it really didn't live up to the standards that we're looking for the intellectual challenge for students. So SB 98 states that we have to meet that intellectual challenge, and it has to be equivalent to in-person learning. Of course, the laws remain in place for English language learners, special ed students, and this is important. We have to offer daily live interaction with our certificated employees. So no packets. This is not packet education. This is daily live interaction. And so it's important for us to maintain our connectedness. In addition, one thing that I failed to mention on this slide is that if a student misses 60% or more of the week, the teacher has the responsibility to reach out to that child and do a well check and do a contact check. So the state and our legislatures are really looking for these high quality measures for us in 2021. And we know that Nevada's well positioned to provide this. In addition, we need to maintain a weekly engagement record. So this is a big reason for why we're using Google Classroom. This is where we're going to maintain an engagement record that demonstrates what learning has taken place and tracks assignments. Senate Bill 98 is really crafted to make sure that parents feel empowered. They understand what their child is learning. They see the progress. And so we'll be working with our educators to make sure that we provide that. That is how we'll be receiving our ADA, and it's important that that documentation be in place to avoid any penalties that could come from the state. All right, our reentry team, we had 150 members who volunteered to write that document for us in June. Where we're proud to say that we represented all of our stakeholder groups in that document, and had 45% of those participants were teachers. They brought their classroom perspective. We had parents. In my own group, we had students whose voice really helped sway the conversation on our scheduling. And we heard from our principals and our classified staff as well. In addition, we ran 2 separate thought exchanges to really make sure that we were understanding what our community was looking for from us. We heard from a high number of parents and students and staff who were able to really give us their thoughts on what we should be paying attention to and focusing on during reentry. So really appreciate all the community input that we've had in writing this document. One of the things that came out for us as early as May is we sent out a survey, and that survey data suggested to us that there was perhaps 20% of our families who really were at a place where they didn't think they would be making the choice to send their child to in-person schooling, perhaps until the end of the pandemic. And so we brought this back to the reentry team and knew we needed to create a solution for these families. And so this is what gave rise to our flexible in-person schooling. And this is for that 80% that were telling us, at some point we do want to get our child on campus and interacting with their teacher. And then the Virtual Learning Academy, which we designed for those families who may be declining to return, may have medical or fragile issues at home due to health. And so we established both of these. We have finished our enrollment for the Virtual Learning Academy, and it's remarkably close to that data point that we had in May. And we have 18% of our students are enrolled in the Virtual Learning Academy. So these are individuals who are really looking for the remote experience through the 2021 school year. There's about 20% of families who failed to respond to the survey. So we are sending out letters and communication in English and Spanish, and and trying to make sure that they understand that if we don't hear from them, that they'll default into the flexible in-person learning, and they'll be part of the cohort that we are planning at some point, situation permitting, to bring to in-person so that they can have that interaction with their parents. So that 18%, that equates to 1,400 students. So that's a remarkable body of student body, and we're working hard to make sure that we're providing for those students. Another thing that I want to really make clear is that as we're looking at down the road for education, there's many of us that believe that a virtual learning academy is something that families will be looking for in the future. There are a lot of charter schools that do quite well nationally that offer virtual learning. And Novato's never really entered into this space, but we think that we can do it better than a lot of our competitors. And so we are really building this with the thought that we'd like to see it remain in place and have it be a place for students who may have anxiety, who may be looking at a homeschooling option or have health issues, or simply prefer this method of learning. And so for that reason, we're really building something that we think will last, and we'll be excited to report back to the board and see if that's a direction that we want to continue to go as a district. My right-hand man, Jen Larson, has really been working with the principals on the establishment of the Virtual Learning Academy, and I've asked her to just kind of give a high-level overview of what the Virtual Learning Academy is.
All right, okay. So thank you very much. We're very excited about what we have planned and what we have in store for our Virtual Learning Academy. As you guys know, it is a K-12 program, so we will be serving students from every school within Nevada Unified School District. Just to clarify, our students will remain part of their home school. So we're not removing them from their school. That will continue to be their reporting school, but we are serving them for this year or this semester, depending on their decision, in the Virtual Learning Academy. So we have temporarily transferred these 1,300 students into this program, and we will be serving them under the leadership of Amanda Davis and Elizabeth Olenek from Olive. They will also be co-principaling and overseeing the in-person flexible model that's happening on the Olive campus. At this point, we are in the scheduling process, and we are in the process of identifying the teachers who will be serving our students in this program. With 1,300 students, this program is serving just under 20%. And as you can imagine, that requires a large number of staff members to take on the commitment of overseeing this group of students. And so we're in the process of aligning our needs with our staffing as well. We have just about an even split. We have just under 600 students in K through 5 and just over 600 students in our 6 through 12. As we develop the program, we're keeping a couple of things in mind. One is we want to make sure we can meet the academic needs, but also making sure that we are able to meet the social emotional needs, keep our students connected to their home schools, to any of the staff members that have been providing services for them over the years. This would include academic counselors, social emotional counselors, any kind of support services. But also building community within this virtual learning environment so that they have a culture and a community within the cohorts that they're going to be learning in for the next months ahead. We are looking at specialized curriculum that is designed for remote learning. We will be doing all of our professional development as we lead into the school year, specific to preparing teachers to be educators within a remote environment. As we've mentioned before, this is not a component that our face-to-face schools have ever necessarily relied on. And so it will be the #1 focus in the beginning as we re-enter. Once we've re-entered and we have some of our strategies in place for high quality remote engagement, we will move into the standards aligned aspects of our professional development that Dr. Carter mentioned earlier. In addition, As we talked about in our town hall, there will be opportunities for students to transfer in and out throughout the year as the health guidances change. We'll be re-examining where we are in December and looking forward for the remainder of the year to give families an opportunity to determine if the Virtual Learning Academy is the right choice for them or if they're going to be moving back to their face-to-face module. That's it.
Didn't mean to fast forward on you there.
That's okay. It was like the hook. I was done.
Director Larson will remain in the room for any questions we might have on the academy later. All right, so for the 80% of our families, they reported that they would like us to strive towards in-person learning. And so this is their flexible in-person learning model. I'll talk a little bit more about the flexibility as we go along. But you'll remember this slide from my first presentation when we really felt like we're looking at 3 phases of entry. The first phase could be remote, and second would be stepping into hybrid, isolated activities in small isolated groups. And the phase 3 would be return. When I met with both the elementary and secondary scheduling team, we really applied ourselves to make sure that we felt like we had a solution, at least the rough edges of a solution, so that if we needed a phase 1 schedule, we had it, a phase 2 and a phase 3. The reason why we call it the flexible in-person schooling model is because it really is designed to adapt through all 3 phases, to the 1, to the 2, to the 3. And we've built in what we like to call little sort of dials that we can adjust based on what's taking place in our community and what our county health officials are telling us is safe. One of the ways that we can adjust our in-person scheduling is we can adjust what percentage of students actually come to campus and meet with our educators. So we could come up with a schedule where we have at-risk or struggling students coming to campus and meeting in person while the majority of the class is outside. That's at the low end, and then we can dial it all the way up so that we have our entire class in person, and just if a child is sick, we have the ongoing remote component that will be in place throughout the 2021 school year. So any child that is ill or needs to not be in class under the county health orders, they will have constant access to the remote education throughout the 2021 school year. The other area that is flexible is in cohorts. So we can have our classes returning in some kind of hybrid or full in-person model. But when there's an outbreak, we can simply collapse that cohort, and that cohort can have their education take place remotely for the 14-day quarantine period, but the rest of the campus is able to continue in-person instruction. And lastly, and this is the one that we're going to be experiencing here as we re-enter school, is that the calendar is adaptable. So we can start as we are now with no amount of time tied to the in-person instruction and having to fully remote, and adjust accordingly up to and including a full in-person, just based on the calendar and what we're hearing from county health. So we feel like it's a really clever model that will be able to adapt to what challenges we'll face through the 2021 school year. This is the remote schedule from elementary. This is kind of just a very rough outline, and we didn't have time to get this prepared for the board packet, but I did have a task force of elementary scheduling individuals who have put together sort of what a typical day for an elementary student could look like, and what the expectations are when we're in person, when we're remote. And so I'll be excited to release that, and all elementary parents will have that, and we'll have continuity across the system related to the remote elementary school schedule. The elementary team also put together a hybrid schedule. This will look very familiar to you, as it was the schedule that I presented on the 16th, where we have cohorts that are staggered We've adjusted some of those times, and we have half the cohort in person, the other half at home getting remote instruction, a middle day for making sure that we're doing targeted interventions for at-risk group, and then the opportunity to flip for Thursday, Friday instruction. So this is what the task force recommended for our elementary school. The return schedule is one that we spent a lot of time on, looking at the opportunity to stagger lunches. So if you look across the system, we don't have kids in different grades on the fields during recess at the same time. And in addition, we have a schedule in which our students are getting the bag lunches safely in their rooms before going out to recess, and the principals will assign different fields for different cohorts, and we'll work on ways to keep those students separate. And then when they go home, have some of those more heavy breathing activities like PE or singing or music or art offered remotely. Middle school, for their remote schedule, this looks like the hybrid schedule, I think. Yeah, I think this is the hybrid. So we have first period, second period, third period offered in a continual basis, and then asynchronous learning taking place online. And the middle school as well has worked to refine what the expectations will be for parents. I don't have that here for you today, but that's something that they've worked on. And just like an elementary parent will get a packet explaining what is going to be happening every hour and what they can expect, middle school is going to do that as well. Their hybrid schedule has groups of cohorts coming similar to the elementary school, where cohort A would be in person on Monday, Tuesday, intervention on Wednesday, and then flipping, where cohort B then is in person on Thursday and Friday. And then this is their full return to school, 3 periods daily with an intervention period, a grab and go lunch for students, and then online learning for any course that they didn't have in person during the day. High school, their recommended schedule in remote, they're really trying to groove some behaviors that easily transition into in-person learning. And so they're going to be sticking to their traditional model and what a student will be doing in person. So 2 periods daily, and then the teacher will be offering intervention for any student who falls behind on pacing or on grading expectations. Hybrid will be a week-long cohort on, so 5 days for a high school student, AB days, and then the next week home. So they wanted the high school students to be in class every single day, whether that be in person or remote, switching off on a weekly basis. All right, so let's talk about sort of the general safety measures. Last time I was before you, I talked about our 9 chapters, our communication plan, our facilities and custodial plan, illness and prevention, wellness supports, mental health, our accelerating strategies and our fiscal considerations, meal service, instructional considerations, and a little bit about the adaptable schedules. For today's presentation, I want to talk a little bit more about some of those Cal OSHA guidelines, and I'm going to turn it over to Assistant Superintendent Hawkins to just kind of go over what's taking place and the measures that are going to be in place for student and staff safety on our campus.
All right, thank you, Dr. Carter. First, I want to go into some personal protective equipment and essential protective equipment. We've already received a vast majority of all of it. We're just waiting for a couple items to come in, but that includes reusable masks for all staff and students, disposable masks for all staff and students, and face shields for staff. It also includes sanitizer, both in the classroom, around campus, and at the major entry points, thermometers for different departments, gloves, and plexiglass barriers that we will have in some office space, and then in some learning spaces where social distancing is not possible. Moving on to staff testing. Staff will be periodically tested. I actually got tested last week. And so we're working with County Health to finalize that. The testing will be as capacity permits and as practicable. In terms of, there will be daily cleaning and sanitizing of all classrooms. Additional supplies budgets have been approved for all sites for additional soap, paper towels, disinfectant, and additional COVID-related needs. Additional trainings will be occurring prior to schools being open for either hybrid or in-person learning for all custodians and all substitute custodians. And we will be following Cal OSHA and CDC guidelines around the use of our ventilation and HVAC equipment. Moving on to distancing inside and outside the classroom. We'll be implementing social distancing within our classrooms, other spaces and offices, and where that is not possible, physical barriers, including plexiglass, will be implemented. We are also finalizing our arrival and departure procedures, and we've purchased directional signs, stickers, etc., for flow around campuses. And we are working with principals in the next 2 weeks to finalize the one-way flows around campus to avoid, to encourage social distancing to the extent possible. We will also have health screenings. We're working with the Marin and State Public Health for the guidelines around that, as well as the guidelines for closing cohorts. And so I want to just go over a couple of the scenarios around, before we go into those scenarios, classroom cohorts will be closed if there is a positive test within that cohort for at least 14 days. Also, anyone in contact with a COVID positive student, and that we call a contact within 6 feet for more than 15 minutes, they will also be required to stay home for at least 14 days. We can move on to a couple of scenarios. There's significantly more than this, but I wanted to go over 4 pretty common scenarios and talk about if that happened, what will our action be if the cohort can stay open or needs to close, and what communication should be expected by parents. So the first is a student or staff member exhibits symptoms. That might be a fever or other things on the health screening. That student will be required to go home. The cohort will stay open, and we will await word from the family. If a family member of a student or a close contact with that student is positive, we will report that to public health. The cohort will stay open, but a communication will go out to student families and staff that may have been in contact with that person. The third scenario, a student or staff member that does test positive for COVID-19, that, as I noted before, that cohort will be closed for 14 days. We will be working closely with the Marin Public Health Department, and all of that will be sent both in a letter and in phone calls to all affected families of students and staff. And then kind of a last scenario that we look at would be that the student or staff member in any of the above 1 through 3 takes a COVID test and tests negative. Obviously the cohort would be open, but we would send a letter to student families and staff, noting that there was that negative test. One thing to be clear here is, though, that student or staff would have to wait 3 days post-symptomatic to be able to come back to school. So that's a little bit different than obviously in the past.
Thanks, Yancey. So all of this information, that guide that Yancey just went over, is on the Marin County of Education and the Health Department. It's available in English and Spanish. In addition, we'll be making sure that we're pushing that out to parents so that both parents and staff understand how to act appropriately when they have symptoms or contacts or suspected connection to any outbreak. So we'll be making sure that we really push the education around this for our community. All right, reopening. When can we do it? July 17th, we had some guidance issued by the governor and the California Department of Health. And basically, as we all know, districts that are within a county that's on a monitoring list, and that currently includes Marin County, we must begin the year using distance learning. We may be able to reopen at any time if we're in a jurisdiction that has not been in the county monitoring within the past 14 days. And so that's really going to be the metric that I know Superintendent Koska checks the website every day to monitor the situation. And as we start to get any kind of streak that starts pushing us towards those 14 days, he'll be messaging that out. And once we do hit that 14 days, we'll hear some communication with him. We'll give the community a week to prepare, to make sure that we have a little bit of time before immediately returning. But that's the metric that's going to be most critical for us to be able to get students back onto our campuses. Just a reminder that, as a public agency, we're beholden to SB 98, and SB 98 tells us that we shall offer in-person instruction to the greatest extent possible. So Nevada will be continuing to strive towards that goal and that expectation that we have under the law, and that of course we're all hoping for. So we put together some guidance that's based on the California Department Public of Health expectations on when we close and how we close. So the first thing we need to look at is, are we off that 14-day list? And if we are, then we are able to then have a conversation with Marin County Public Health Guidelines. As I mentioned, Superintendent Koska will let our community know 1 week in advance, hey, it looks like we're going to be able to come back under these particular guidelines. And then we'd like to return with that hybrid schedule. I think that's most likely with some smaller cohorts, and follow the reentry plan guidance for that hybrid schedule. After about 6 weeks of that hybrid schedule, getting families accustomed to being in the classroom and helping students learn our health and safety protocols, then within the county, Marin County Public Health Guidelines, we might be able to expand to that full day in-person schedule that we've worked on. And again, the superintendent will notify our community a week in advance if we see any changes of the ability to expand from hybrid to a more fully in-person schedule. School closures. How do cohorts and school closures happen? Yancey kind of went over what we're supposed to do in each instance with individuals. But if an individual does test positive, then we have to quarantine that cohort for 14 days. As he mentioned, even if the symptoms resolve for an individual, they are expected to stay home for 3 days subsequent before they can return to our campus. If there are multiple cohorts that take place at any given school, and that rate or the rate exceeds 5% of the total numbers of teachers, students, and staff within a 14-day period, then the California Department of Public Health Guidelines are encouraging us to close in-person learning for a 14-day period. So if we start to see an outbreak that begins to exceed that 5% mark, then that school and only that school would be closed for the 14 days. If not, then we continue to work with our county health department and simply quarantine those smaller groups. The state is not going to, says they're not going to require school closes, but it could be recommended as appropriate based on these factors. If we begin to see multiple cases and multiple cohorts across the school, as I mentioned, if we see 5% of the total numbers of teachers, students, and staff are positive cases within a 14-day period, or our local county health officer may simply determine that a school closure is warranted and will be giving that directive to us. So any school closure on the other end will be dictated by these numbers in our county health orders. After a closure, cohorts may typically reopen after 14 days, and this is where our disinfecting team would come in. Part of the guidance is that the classroom should rest for 24 hours before our staff go in to clean and disinfect it. Public health conducts an investigation and does the contact tracing using our school records. And then the local county health department will tell us if that cohort is able to return after the 14-day quarantine. So it will very much be a hand-in-hand operation with our Marin County health partners. All right, let's hope this doesn't happen, but a scenario that could trigger a school district closure, according to the California Department of Public Health guidelines, a superintendent should close if 25% or more of schools in a district have had to close due to COVID-19 within 14 days and in consultation with the local public health department. So there's some really clear guidelines about how to respond to any cases that we may see in the 2021 school year. And it's going to be our responsibility to be meticulously and constantly working with county health around these matters. I just want to again reiterate Governor Newsom's statement on July 17th was that school districts that are allowed to open, we must. That is our obligation. And so when we're able to meet these metrics, we will be opening our doors and returning to in-person, abiding by the county health guidelines. And then these are the scenarios where we could close cohorts, schools, or a district. As the reentry team looked at grading, the recommendation from the individuals on the reentry team were simply to follow our standard board policies. We do encourage our staff to use those proficiency-based tools as we strive to become a more proficiency-based education system. And we do have those metrics, those rubrics, and those guidelines that are available to our staff, and we encourage them to use them. But it will default to our board policy, BPAR 5121. Our August teacher professional development, I'm gonna ask Director Larson to talk a little bit about this, but this is where we're gonna really focus on making sure that our teachers have the opportunity to have some professional development in some of the tools that they will be needing to use throughout the 2021 school year. Jen?
All right, so as you can imagine, our professional development needs not only are different this year, but need to look a little bit different this year as well. As you heard from Assistant Superintendent Farrar, we are still in negotiations with our partners around what our professional schedule will look like in the return to school. What we do know is that it will focus on certification that is widely recognized in the area of remote learning. As our need as a country has increased, most of our partners have over the summer put together high quality remote learning certification and training programs. And so we are going to be partnering with them. You can see that two of these options are Google. One is Marzano, another is Avid, and the other one that is not on here yet is Zoom. And these are all partners that we've been working with. For the most part, all of these are provided at no cost for educators. and they all result in some kind of a formal certification or training badge that teachers then have to show that they are in fact trained to be remote or virtual learning educators. Because of the format that these types of professional development opportunities take, we are going to be offering these kind of on a flexible model. We're going to be offering these opportunities in the beginning of August. Teachers will have the ability to participate these on their own schedule, or if they've already participated in these over the summer, which we know some of our teachers have, we want to honor all of the work our teachers have put in already over the summer doing some of these training opportunities. If teachers prefer not to do that prior to our return to school, then these can be utilized on the 2 days that we know we will have in our typical PD schedule, which are on August 17th and 18th. So it will be a choose the schedule and choose the format that most aligns with your teaching models and your needs as a professional. And we know that these are all offered by high quality and nationally recognized partners that our teachers are familiar with.
All right, we're going to open it up to questions and answers. I hope that we've really helped communicate to you that we're working to create solutions that are adaptable, that are flexible, that are every bit tied to what we're being told by the California Department of Public Health, our legislatures, the County Marin Public Health Department as well, and that will continue to be our very cautious and slow and safety-oriented approach to the challenges ahead.
All right, we'll open up to board members. Trustee Aguila.
Yeah, thank you. I know this is a lot of hard work, a lot of difficult decisions, and this looks great. I'm so happy that this is a living document. There's a lot of unknowns in the future, and so I'm just thrilled that we're able to have this guide. And I wanted to ask Yancy, you mentioned that we don't have all the protective equipment yet, not all of it, but just wanted to know about when do you expect that we will receive it? That's one question. I have another one. And then the exact number of the virtual learning academy, I heard several, I heard 1,300 and 1,400. Can somebody clarify how many?
Director.
Virtual Academy? Yeah, Virtual Academy has just under 1,300. As of today, we are at about 1,296.
So not 1,400, but 1,296.
Yep, just under 1,300.
Okay. And also, I have a question for the superintendent. It's on page 42, but the page where it talks about that we will notify the parents a week in advance if we decide to start school, and it says 1 week in advance. And so, for your professional opinion, do you think that 1 week in advance is realistic? And is there flexibility on that? Could it be sooner? Could it be later?
So I think that we would give at least 1 week's notice in advance of making that decision. If we could give a little bit more, that would be great. But our minimum that we're going to be able to provide is a week.
So minimum. Okay. Thank you. And then when Yancy, do we suspect that we will have all the equipment ready by the first day of school, that they will arrive?
Absolutely. We've received we have all of our masks, disposable, reusable, face shields, sanitizer, thermometers, gloves, and we have some of our plexiglass barriers, but we're still expecting some in. We expect that before the regular start of the school year, even before when we know that we'll be at least remote until September 8th. So it'll be in well before any students are on campus in learning situations.
Okay, and will we have enough for again, there's many unknowns in the future. Will we have enough for a long time?
Yes, we've been purchasing significant amounts of equipment, but we've also been partnering with the Marin County Office of Education and the state of California, who have been a huge help in this area. And so we feel very comfortable where we are with EPE and PPE as we move forward.
Great, thank you. And so that's it for now.
Okay,
Thank you.
Trustee Gilla. Trustee Cooper, and then Trustee Gasson. You're
Tom, I
muted,
can't hear you.
Tom. Just,
Yeah, I know. Sorry.
there we
about
go.
that. Can you hear me okay, or is it kind of
It's,
problem here?
we can hear you, but for me, it's faint. So.
Okay, I'll speak as loud as I can without shouting. Thank you very much, Amy. This is an awesome document, and it's really helpful for us now as well as in the future. I know it. I wondered a couple of things. My first question is the curriculum set forth under the Virtual Learning Academy versus the curriculum that we'll be offering to, in the beginning, to all of our students who will be remote. How do those differ?
I'm going to kick that over to Director Larson.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's going to be handled in a couple of different ways. One of the things that we know we have a distinct need for this year is some kind of a universal screener in language arts and math. We know that there's going to be gaps that are less predictable than we have had in the past. We're going to have some needs that maybe we wouldn't be able to anticipate. So those screeners will be administered district-wide to make sure that we have data for all of our schools. Now, the rest of the curriculum we will be looking at for consistency. Again, as we talked about, we'll have students potentially moving from program to school to VLA mid-year. And so we need to make sure that we have some significant support tools in place that are consistent throughout our district. So anything that is going to be provided as a support implementation will be provided for all schools, but will be the core for our VLA. Then there are some programs that we have at all of our schools, but not necessarily in the same grade levels and at same level. So we will maintain for the Virtual Learning Academy those programs so that it is consistent from what they've experienced. An example of this might be Studies Weekly and Social Studies. Most of our schools use it. They do it independently of the district office, but we will purchase it for our virtual learning students so that they can maintain what they have had in the past. So we're going to be looking at it, and I'll be bringing a proposal in the near future around what those specifics will be. So I guess my short answer is some of it will be provided district-wide to ensure that consistency. Some of it will be maintained at the school sites because that is what the kids and the teachers are comfortable with there.
Okay, thank you. I know it's a fluid situation, and we're all learning along the way.
Yeah.
So good job.
What I can say is that a large part of what's so important with this is going to be the maintenance of our Google Classroom. So that is one thing that all of our teachers do maintain. And regardless of what platform we're being used, all of it can be linked into their Google Classroom. So that is the one universal that we absolutely can depend on.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Trustee Gasson. Oh, did you have something else?
If I can follow up one more
Yeah.
question. How are we, so the 20% of the parents who didn't respond or select what they wanted their kids to participate in on the first day of school, I know it's important that we capture all those. You touched on it in your presentation, Dr. Carter, but I wondered if you could just go a little bit further in depth for me.
Yep. We have a hard copy mailing now that we're going to be getting out to those homes. We're letting them know that if they don't give us a call, that they will just automatically default. We think the majority of our families are looking for the flexible in-person. And then we're also going to be making phone calls. We'll have our community liaisons, making sure that we've done our best to reach out to those families and they know what to expect on August 20th from us.
Okay, and I'm sure North Bay Security would probably be a part of that.
Yep.
Partnership you just mentioned. Okay, thank you.
Okay, Trustee Gasson and Trustee Millerick.
So thank you. I know this is a huge undertaking. And what I love about tonight's presentation is the scenarios and the flow, the yes and no slides that you have. I think those are fabulous because I cannot tell you how many times, even myself as a parent, like, well, what if this happens? And so it's a great start. So I'm really grateful that those are there. And I'm wondering if there's a way or plans to have them put online so that people do have that information available. Yes, okay, great. I did just double check because I don't frequently go on the NUSD site, but I do see that the return to school guide is on there. And I wanted to mention it to families because it's so big, it's unreal. You know, how do I get through it? How do I navigate? And it's got to the left, the sections that people can click on. And I was just playing with it for a little bit. So I just want to let the community know that it is available and you can just go to the class schedules and stuff like that. Because I know that those are the pieces that, you know, all this, it's all important, but everybody wants to know, well, when is my kid going to go under what scenario? So having that a click away is great to have. So I look forward to that continuing. The other thing that I would like to acknowledge is the training for the teachers, the Google Classroom, the Marzano and all those. One thing I'm wondering, we've talked in our elementary reentry committee is about the fact, and I speak as a parent who thinks they're pretty tech savvy, but realized that I wasn't so good with Google Classroom. If there's a way that we can, I know we're not educators and it sounds like the programs are for free for educators, but if there's a way we can offer to parents the opportunity for some tape version or online training lesson on how to navigate through Google Classroom for the kids who tell us that, Mom, we've got it all under control, but we really have to go in and check to make sure that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing.
I think that's a fantastic idea. So what I'm writing down is a parent series about supporting students using the Google tools.
That would be fabulous. That would be great. Because I still think I don't know how to do it.
We put together some modules in English and Spanish in spring, and so we'll be dusting those out again and kind of doing a parent's orientation to remote learning.
Perfect, perfect. And the final thing, I touched on something that Trustee Cooper was talking about in terms of outreach to our families. I know that there's so many different ways that we get communicated with, like from our school, whether it's Constella or, you know, little text blasts, which I prefer to not have, but I know some people like to have. And I think at some point, even though it seems like intuitive that parents should be reaching out and saying, do you have the best contact information for me? That my understanding is a lot of people have opted out in the past and said, look, I don't want to hear anything. I don't want to get emails or whatever. And I think we need to go out there again and make sure that we have some point of contact, whether it's that we can send out a text. In fact, at some point recently, I think it was a reminder about the, you know, having to do a response. I did get a text message about that, but making sure that we at least have one live committed contact point with families. So we're not missing and just reminding them that, yeah, before you said you don't want to get emails, but are you really sure that you don't want to get an email right now? Because stuff is fluid, particularly if we have a week's notice that the kids' schedule might shift. I think that would be great. I think that was all it. So thank you so much for everything you're doing.
Diane, I want to circle back to this wonderful document. This is our very dense and very thorough and thoughtful preparing for the 2021 school year document. We're working on an abridged version that's right around 30 pages. It's still a lot, but I think it gets to the high points that the parents really want to see. And so I anticipate that that'll go out at some point this week. And it says, hey, this is the short version. If you want more details, here's the link to get the more details. You know, our concern is that parents are going to read that and be like, well, but what about, you know, whatever's in the part that we cut out? But at the end of the day, we feel like it's better to put out something that's a little more accessible. And we know it'll create some challenges and some problems, but we think it's worth those that it'll create. So That'll come out this week.
I think that's great. And what I'm just wondering is you can even put that in the same, you know, like I'm the kind of person that I want to get down to the nitty gritty. So you can just say, look, you want this is short. If you want to go, I mean, to me, there's a way to do both. I see, Director Larson, did you?
Sorry, I just want to say on that same note, we've had a lot of questions about that document being in Spanish. Because it's embedded in our website, it is fully in Spanish. You just have to click the translate button. So I just want the community who's listening to know, hit that translate button on the bottom of our website and it'll all be in Spanish as well.
Yeah, great. No, I know I've had that and I've tried to explain that it is that ability exists there. So I think that's great to Sanjay. And I actually apologize. There was one more thing I wanted to ask about, and it has to do with the cohorts. If there was any information in terms of how those are going to look. And I don't know if Assistant Superintendent Hawkins would like to add anything from earlier about what we were doing in terms of figuring out those cohort sizes for the school sites. And that's it.
We've tasked both the elementary and secondary to build their schedules so that they can easily split them in half. So because we're doing the block schedule, the high school, we're looking at classroom sizes of about 25. And so, you know, we're planning if those get cut in half, we're keeping them between 12 to 15. We're asking for those same metrics for elementary. So build a schedule that you could come back with 12 to 15 size cohort. And then we'll just kind of take the guidance of county health as to increase those as they permit us to.
All right, Trustee Miller.
This is going to be a crazy time. And to me, the most important, we have 3 separate programs, either start at home and maybe finally end up every other week at high school. Maybe we get to that by June of next year. So our students, all 8,000 of them are going to go through, or at least all of them are going to go through at least one transition. Most of them will go through 2 transitions. So we're looking at 12,000 program transitions over the next year. So the normal, oh, look at, we're in school, everybody comes to the same classroom, I can be normal, is just not going to be part of our experience. And then if we get some waves like the Marlins got this week, where they plan to start playing and now can't because they got 17 infected players, those kinds of waves of uncertainty are going to be crazy. So I think there's 2 things that we should focus on, and you've explained both of them pretty well, but I want to highlight them. One is, you guys have spent most of this evening talking about how do you transition from one program to another. You've spent lots and lots of time talking about not the specific program, but how do you move a student from one to the other. I think that's going to be where our challenge is, and I'm glad to see you're focusing on that. I think that's going to be the upset in family life and student life. They're going to be, it's one way Monday and it's another way a week from Monday, and then maybe it goes back. And I think the stability that we can provide is going to be key, and the smoothness of those transitions, which means from the time it's announced to the time I understand it, because I can go online and read about it, or I got a good piece of paper that describes it, is going to be key. There's some other key things that you've described that NUSD has put together that will make this, I think, effective, that we've done that others haven't. This district put a Chromebook in the hands of every student over the last 3 years. Jen Larson has led the development of Google Classroom and Google Chromebook educational programs over the last 3 years. We are 3 years into the process of being able to effectively educate our students remotely. Many school districts do not have that leg up. And it's the foresight of this team that's put us in there, and it's going to allow us to stand on that stable platform. Those will be the things that students and families will see. They have a Chromebook they can bring home, it's theirs, they're familiar with it, they've been doing it for a year already, they'll understand that. We've also got teachers who've been trained to use those tools starting last year, not just this year, not like, you know, kind of June 27th, they got a Chromebook and they have to figure this thing out and they've never seen one before in their life. Nevada Unified School District has that as a stable platform. So that our teachers are a stable platform. Plus, we've got a strong relationship. Our teachers live in this town or live close by this town. The comments that were made at the beginning of this meeting about how strong our teaching platform is in terms of the commitment of the 800 people that work for the Nevada Unified School District to support the children is absolutely key. So I think we need to inventory every one of those points of stability and stand on those, because that's what's going to make the families comfortable. That's what's going to make the students comfortable. The more we can rely on things that are not changing, the more we can serve our parents, because there's going to be way more things changing this year than they've ever seen before. So the leadership here, the stability that we establish for this community, and the consistency that we provide from a classroom support staff who is doing some cleaning at the end of every session, to the teachers, to the superintendent, has to portray we're here to serve families in this community. And I think we've got the platform to do it. I just think we have to focus on what's stable, not what's transitioning. So there's my 2 cents. I think I'm thrilled with the work that Amy, you and Jen have come forward with. And I know there's a huge team behind you to have done this much work, but the more it's clear up front that we are in control, the better the community will receive the Nevada School District's efforts to deliver high caliber, quality academic programs during this tough time. So that's the long way of saying thank you for your hard work. I think what that is. So Debbie, thanks.
All right, Trustee Mack, and then we'll go to public comment. You're on mute.
Sorry, I had to grab my mouse there. Just want to say thank you to Amy and Jen for a great presentation. A lot of work has gone into this, and your leadership has been fantastic getting this done. And also to everybody who contributed, because this was a very big team effort, community effort, and it's reflective in the work product. Pretty impressive, detailed plan. Dare I say, we hopefully are pretty far ahead of other districts close to us and like us. A couple things I just want to touch on. The first question is a little bit rhetorical. I already asked it in close, but I just want to put it out there in public. Can you talk a little bit to the spread of the 1,300 students that are going to be in the VLA in terms of grade or levels?
Absolutely. It's actually fairly evenly split. We are right around 600 for elementary. I want to say somewhere around 598. And then we are about 50 more than that in our 6 through 12 at about, I want to say 654 today. So we're about 50 off, a little heavy in the secondary. And in terms of grades, we definitely have a pretty even split from K through 5. So we have just about the same number of kids in each grade, which is fantastic. When we get up into the higher grades, it's a little bit less in some of our transition years. So we see a little bit less in 6th, a little bit less in 9th, and a little bit higher numbers in our 11th and 12th grade.
Got it. Okay. And I believe that we don't have the answer to this yet, but I would like to follow up to get a better understanding of the geographic distribution of that group too, to see if we are pulling from a particular part of the district. It's going to impact us on the other side with our real schools, our physical schools, I should say. And it could just be part of our decision-making process. So if we could follow up with that, I'd appreciate it.
I do have that, and I can put that in a Friday update for you this week.
Beautiful. Thank you. It'd be great to know. I have my own speculation, but I want to see the real thing. Then if we could talk a little bit about, at one point, I know we're mentioning how VLA families, students can opt back into the hybrid model or kind of in and out. Can you talk a little bit to the process and the timing that's involved in doing that? Because obviously it's not something we want to do on a totally fluid basis. No. Is it, what's the thresholds there?
So At this point, we're looking at reevaluating that decision at the halfway mark. So at the at the December split between at the winter break. As you can imagine, with all of the staffing shifts that are happening, we'll be building cohorts. At this point, we're staffing based on cohorts so that we could accommodate anyone who wanted either program. But once those cohorts are built and we've staffed to those cohorts, it makes it a little bit more challenging to shuffle the numbers around. So we will be connecting with families again at December. That's a fairly natural transition point for most of our students. We're still discussing whether that really works for elementary because they're on a trimester system. It may be that we want to look at that where they have a more natural split, which is around the Thanksgiving break. But we're looking at having something towards the center of the year, being able to reevaluate and parents reconsidering their choice. And obviously, we're going to need to take into account where we have space and how our staff can accommodate what those requests are.
Got it. So am I correct to say it's pretty much winter break? And really that's about it for the year? The one chance basically that during the year?
I would say one of the things that I've messaged is that there's a natural break at the midpoint. So we're asking people to commit for that first big chunk of the year. We talked a lot about the semester break, and we may wiggle that a little bit for elementary if that would serve our community better. At any other point, let's say a family is in the virtual learning academy and it just isn't working for them, and they want to go back to their home school. They put in a request to go back to their home school. There's a space, we can make that happen. But it's those are gonna have to be on a space available situation. What I've tried to message is we're gonna do our best to get families in the programs that they wanna be in when they wanna be in them. We can do that before the July 20th cutoff date. We can do that at the semester. Outside of that, we're gonna do our best, but we can't make a rock solid commitment to being able to make that change then.
Got it. That's a great answer. It sounds like, yeah, perfect answer in terms of how we are going to work with our families, but we do have limitations we need to abide by. So it makes sense to me. And just the last thing, and Amy, this kind of touches on your introduction. And, admittedly, as you know, I got a little lost in this, and I just want to reiterate to everybody out there that the VLA is really something that is built to last, something that might go on if it's successful. So people who are watching, people who are listening, consider that this is something that is this is a campus, if you will, a virtual campus that we're building that certainly serves our needs in a COVID world for those parents that need it, but as well could continue, and we'll see how it goes. So I think we need to emphasize that fairly frequently, because I think a lot of people like me are kind of in COVID blinder mode. So.
And Greg, Trustee Mack, I'd like to add to that it's going to be the board's decision whether or not that program goes on or not. That's not something that Dr. Carter and myself get to say, hey, we just added a new campus to this district. Yeah. No, and there's some things we would have to do with the county and with the state in order to make that happen. But, we in this district, in this leadership team under your guidance, we want to make sure we're doing things right. And we want to make sure that we're looking at the big picture. And, if there's a possibility that COVID could drift into the 21-22 school year, God forbid, or, this is a model that serves our community particularly well, we want to be prepared for that. And then, we'll be bringing this back to you in the spring and saying, hey, this is where we see the Virtual Learning Academy going. What are your thoughts as trustees? So that ball will be in your court.
Understood.
All right, I'm going to move on to public comment. See, Ellen's popped up there, so she said she was going to read them all.
Thank you. The first one is from Michael Sullivan, Return to School. I just want to say thank you on behalf of the community to the board members, NUSD administration, and members of the teachers union. There are a variety of different opinions being discussed, but we all share one common interest and goal, and that is to see our community prosper and our children to come out on the other side of this well-educated and emotionally unscathed. Just as we parents are spending much of our summer trying to figure out what schooling will look like in the fall, so too are you working during your vacation time on the same. Thank you. This next one is from Bob Cobb, in-person learning options. Much of the concern I've read from teachers has been over teaching full classrooms with improper ventilation, which could lead to the spread of COVID-19. In 1908, during a tuberculosis epidemic, New York schools implemented outdoor classrooms to help prevent the spread of TB. Has there been any discussion or planning to do anything similar? If yes, what are those plans? If no, why hasn't this been considered? Outdoor learning, while the weather permits, could be a way to bridge in-person learning until the county is removed from the state's watch list. This next one is from Dina Lloyd on the re-entry plan. As an ICU nurse that cares directly for COVID patients, I have seen firsthand the devastating effects of this disease. We need a safe, robust re-entry plan that protects our precious students, families, teachers, staff, and community. Parents also need a flexible option that does not commit them to in-person or online for longer than a semester, not an entire academic year, as the pandemic situation is constantly evolving. This would allow us to best serve our students with the appropriate balance of learning and health. We need an extension to the July 17th date to be fully informed once contract negotiations are complete and a plan is in place. Thank you. Respectfully, Dina Lloyd. This next one is from Noni Reyes. Counselors, safeguard for students, parents, and staff. Some of us counselors return to work as early as next week, and therefore we consider our concerns urgent. We appreciate you taking the time to hear what we have to say and are more than willing to have a more in-depth conversation with you. We also understand that this is new territory for all of us and are sure that our expressing these concerns will be taken with the spirit they are shared to continue to provide the best and most appropriate services to our students, parents and guardians, and community. Protocols need to be clearly in place as to how to advise staff in the event of a staff member contracting COVID. Counselors and psychologists need appropriate and confidential space to meet with students and parents. Our offices are too small to safely socially distance. The counselors, psychologists, as well as registrar and counseling technician need the same PPE that teachers will have. Plexiglass partitions, masks, sanitizer, cleaning materials to disinfect after each contact. Counselors need to be included in training for remote teaching, as traditionally we do grade level presentations and tier 1 social emotional interventions in the classroom, and will need to be able to do so remotely. Thank you again for this opportunity to participate in the discussion. This next one is from Sierra Cubley de Bruin on reopening. I noticed that only one reopening survey was given for both NUSD parents and NUSD staff members, but since there are reported 7,600 students and 800 staff members, it was predictable that most frequently asked questions and top-rated concerns would center around need of parents. What should I recommend to Linwood's classified employees who feel the survey failed to provide a fair opportunity for their voices to be heard? Despite Marin County's growing rates of COVID transmission and position as one of the hardest hit counties in the state, the prior reopening plan, which NUSD released to the public, declared students could return to campuses on 8/20 and that the schools would be prepared for a possible 14-day shutdown. Who should employees talk to about shared fears surrounding NUSD's original plan, appearing to lack the foresight to plan for the worst in a situation as to this? California government officials recommended statewide campus closures on March 2020 to last through the end of the school year, and consecutively recommended campuses remain closed to Marin County students through at least September 8th. Why does Linwood host summer school students in classrooms on campus daily for on-site learning, while at-risk NUSD employees are still working here despite state recommendations? Linwood's day and night custodians both called in sick one day, yet we still had students and other staff on campus. In cases like this, who, if anyone, is responsible for custodial tasks in their classrooms and around campus? Employees at my site are requesting more direct instruction and a clear protocol on how functions and operations will be augmented for employee safety. I searched the district website for updated resources for staff since the governor's press conference, but unfortunately the up-to-date information disseminated COVID is almost exclusively message for families. The most recent information for staff is outdated and there are dead links. The last one is from Melissa Armosa, return to a school reentry plan. The proposed protocol for how to handle the scenario of a student staff member of a cohort is not in line with June 5th, 2020 CDC guidelines. Instead, they used the modified version from July 23rd, 2020. The biggest change CDC made is that previously, any student staff member displaying COVID-19 symptoms would need to test, quarantine, and contact trace, but in the update, it is not required. In the re-entry plan proposed, a problematic issue is that the requirement for positive or negative COVID-19 test results to trigger the scenario, 2 to 4 protocols of notification and cohort closure, are not effective if test results are received beyond 2 days from the date of taking the test. With the current rate of results received 5 to 12 plus days after testing, these protocols are rendered ineffective at preventing spread, even from those who have symptoms, been tested, and are still waiting to trigger the protocols to protect the rest of the cohort and community. The NUSD community deserves to have protocols that adjust the reality that testing is not guaranteed or reliably timely. Both student families and staff deserve notification if anyone in their cohort has COVID-19 symptoms. Additionally, in scenario 1, for a student or staff member that has a fever or reports COVID-19 symptoms and health screening, the individual will be sent home, but the proposed communication protocol is no action needed, not even a template notification letter. The problematic issue is that the cohort is not notified. Members of the cohort may have eaten their lunch in a closed room with the individual and could be at risk. According to the CDC, now with the exception of schools and 4 schools in June, contacts that are at risk are those who have been in close contact with a person for 2 days prior to symptoms first appearing. Any cohort that has been together with an individual within 48 hours before symptoms were first reported should be at least notified, if not quarantined. Notification policies are the most crucial pillar for trust and safety. Families deserve to be certain that they are receiving all relevant information about cohort exposure, including whether there are symptomatic members of their cohort or they cannot feel safe with in-person instruction. Yes, it may be that many notification letters go out, but transparency is more responsible than not providing cohort symptom information to inform school community members, especially when testing is not timely and each family has to constantly evaluate their own behavior and choices for how to interact with others in their family and community. Improved notification about cohort status and adjusted protocols to address testing lags would improve confidence in school safety and build community trust.
Okay, thank you for reading those. I'm going to bring it back to the board. Any additional comments? Okay. I will just say, I mean, I definitely see a much more clear picture of where we're headed with this plan. And I think unfortunately what helped was the governor said, you know, this is it. This, you know, you're on the watch list for Marin County. And if you're on the watch list, any county, this is how it's going to be for schools. And that sort of helped us get to the point of, unfortunately, we can't be in the classroom. I know I personally would like to see our students back in the classroom. Safety is the #1 priority for our staff and our students, and I think we're getting there, obviously. I know that's the case for our district office, and what we provide, the safety to our teachers and our staff members is important. Also, just a learning environment, whether it's district learning or in the classroom, that's a high priority. And I think we're getting there. We're absolutely getting there. So thank you for the hard work you've put into this plan. I hope our parents and I hope our students and staff see that we're moving down the road in the right direction. We have much more clarity this evening. I know there's probably still some unknowns as we're hearing just through the public comment. We'll do as best we can to address those. I think continuing to build on that frequently asked question page on our website is key. I think as Trustee Gaston said, you know, having the plan there and having those links to where the plan, you know, certain sections is very helpful. So continue to do those things like that. I'd also like to maybe see that we have our school websites have all the proper information on them, because not everybody's going to go to the district website. I will probably go to my school website if that's where my student is going to be, or my child's going to be attending that school. So I hope those are matching, or there's links there on the school websites. So I thank you, Amy and Jen. And I know we had this task force. Trustee Gasson, you were on the task force. I know Trustee Mack was on there. I don't know if you're still serving on the task force. I appreciate the work that both of you've done in that. it's a tremendous undertaking, and so many things coming at you with so many different guidance and procedures, and it's all changing rapidly, and you're trying to adapt. So we need flexibility, we need patience, and we need support from our community and our parents through this. So anybody else? Otherwise, this is approval of this plan this evening. We'll move on, and if anybody would like to make a motion. You're all muted, so somebody, come on.
Okay, I'll make a motion. That
All right.
we,
First by trustee Aguila, second by trustee Gaston. Just to reiterate the recommendation, this is the recommendation to approve the July 24th, 2020 COVID-19 return to school guide. All those in favor? Okay, 7-0. All right, that wraps up this meeting this evening. Thank you again very much to our staff for the presentation tonight. And our going forward, we do have a regular scheduled board meeting beginning August 4th, which is this next Tuesday. That's the beginning of our school regular board meetings for the school board. Otherwise, that is it. This meeting